Hi there guys, I'm Nikhil from GreedyTech and this is a quick unboxing and the complete review of the LG Wing. In India, this phone is available only in one variant and it's priced at 70,000 rupees and comes with 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage. It's available in two colors, Illusion Sky and Aurora Grey, and we have the Illusion Sky color with us right now. This is a brand new phone from LG which brings in a lot of different stuff like a multi-screen form factor with a swivel mode, a gimbal camera motion setup, LG 3D surround engine. It has IP rating and also has military grade drop resistance. Besides that, there are a lot more cool features that you can find only on this phone. Now without any further delays, here's the unboxing. So once we open it up, first we have the accessory box, next we have the phone itself, next we have a 16-watt charger, a Type-C charging cable and another small box. Inside this box we get a Type-C to 3.5mm audio jack. Coming back to the accessory box, inside the box we get a SIM card ejector, some documentation, a plastic hard case and a screen protector. As for the case, it's just a hard bumper case with a two-tone finish on the back. Now back to the phone, there are some highlights on the covers, let me just remove that. Now this is how the phone looks on the front and this is how it looks on the back. Now let's have a physical overview. On the back, this phone has a 3D curved Corning Gorilla Glass 5 for some extra protection, and underneath that we have a pretty cool design. At the top we have the triple camera setup along with that gimbal mechanism with dual LED flash. At the bottom we have the LG branding along with some more specs. On the front we have a huge display protected by a 3D curved Corning Gorilla Glass 5 without any kind of notch or a punch hole design. It's a completely flat display. We can swivel the display to the left side to check out the secondary display. We'll come back to that later. As for the sides, on the right side we have the power and volume buttons made of metal. They are sufficiently elevated and have a nice clicky feel to them. At the top we have the secondary microphone for noise cancellation and the pop-up camera mechanism. On the left side it has just a SIM card tray housing a nano SIM slot along with a hybrid SD card slot. Finally at the bottom it has the primary microphone followed by the Type-C charging port and the speaker grill. As for the earpiece, it's hidden behind the display. Now this phone has a thickness of 10.9mm and weighs 260 grams. It has IP54 water and dust resistance. It is also military standard certified. Besides that, it also has water repellent coating and anti-dust technology. And the hinge mechanism under the primary display is also pretty durable and has been tested for 200,000 times, which is more than you can use. Now these are the complete specifications of this phone. On the rear, this phone has a triple camera setup with a 12MP ultra wide angle camera with bigger pixels and a gimbal motion camera setup followed by a 64MP primary camera with optical image stabilization and finally a 13MP camera with 117-degree field of view. For selfies, inside that pop-up mechanism we get a 32MP camera with f1.9 aperture. As for displays, on the front we get a 6.8-inch OLED display with Full HD Plus resolution, 21:9 aspect ratio with curved edges, and underneath that we have a 3.9-inch OLED display. As for performance, it sports a Snapdragon 765G processor with Adreno 620 GPU, 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage. Finally, this phone is powered by a 4000mAh battery that supports Quick Charge 4.0 and also supports wireless charging. Now I'll start off with the review with the design and build. Now the most highlighting thing about this phone is the overall design and build of the phone. Well, this phone has a completely brand new form factor. We have phones with dual screens, phones with flip screens, flip phones, but this is the first phone with a dual screen setup, but that comes out with a swivel. And here we have it. This is how the phone looks once we swivel the screen. It's a T-shaped screen with a bigger screen at the top and a smaller screen at the bottom. And once you put it back, you have the basic phone. It looks like any other phone out there and there really isn't much to talk about it. Now if we just talk about the phone like a regular phone in its basic form factor, then it looks pretty much like any other phone with smaller bezels all around and curved corners to the sides. And besides that, this phone definitely looks pretty thick at 10.9mm thickness and weighs 260 grams. So as far as you consider it as a basic phone, it's definitely pretty thick, pretty bulky and pretty heavy. So using this phone as a normal phone is definitely out of the question. And once you swivel it and use it in the newer form factor, that's where all its charm comes from. Now in the swivel mode, there's really a lot to talk about. Well, the bigger screen usually has a fixed number of applications that you can use. You can add or remove applications, but most of the time these are the applications that come pre-installed. Most of the time you'll be ending up watching videos in this bigger screen. You can play games as well, but that's really not that convenient. And as for the secondary screen, every time you swivel the phone, it opens up a brand new launcher with limited number of applications. Now in this form factor, there are very few use cases. Most of the people usually watch videos on the bigger screen and use text applications on the smaller screen. Some people also open up maps on the bigger screen and watch a video on the smaller screen. You can do stuff like that, but most of the time, you'll probably end up watching videos on the bigger screen and using a secondary application on the secondary screen. And that's what I've been using it for the most part. This entire form factor definitely looks pretty weird, but it can definitely help you multitask. Now because of this new form factor, LG had to make few new changes, like they went with a pop-up selfie camera, and on this phone there are no stereo speakers. It just has a single speaker at the bottom. Besides that, you do get all the features that you can expect with any other flagship. It does have fast charging, you also get wireless charging, and all the features that you can expect with a flagship. It also has a 3D curved Corning Gorilla Glass 5 on the front and back for some extra protection. Now the only downside with this phone in terms of design and build would be its thickness and weight. If LG could have made it a bit more thinner and maybe weigh less, then you can definitely use this phone as a regular phone and also use it in the dual screen mode. That's something I would have definitely liked. Now when it comes to the hardware department, this phone has dual SIM support along with a hybrid SD card slot. So if you really want more storage, you can also pop in an SD card. It has an in-display fingerprint scanner on the front screen and that's super fast. There's no face unlock feature as it's using the pop-up camera mechanism. There's no water resistance either as it has a lot of moving parts like the swivel mechanism and the pop-up camera mechanism. Besides that, this phone has all the basic features. You also have Bluetooth 5.1, NFC and even wireless charging. Now when it comes to display, this phone has two. The bigger one is a 6.8-inch POLED display with Full HD Plus resolution with just 60Hz refresh rate. The smaller one is a 3.9-inch OLED display with once again 60Hz refresh rate. This is another area where this phone is missing out when compared to other flagships. Maybe a 90Hz display or a 120Hz display would have been great. Besides that little con, rest of the aspects are pretty good. It is a curved display, makes the bezels look much more smaller, brightness levels are good, and blacks are true blacks. It's definitely one of the best displays out there. Whether it's for watching videos or playing games, or even for regular usage, this display definitely looks great. Now when it comes to the camera performance, this phone does a pretty good job. I've already made a dedicated video for the camera review, so you can check that out for more information. But here's the gist. This phone has a triple camera setup on the rear with a 64 megapixel primary camera, a 13 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, and finally a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle camera with a gimbal camera setup. And that's the second most highlighting feature about this phone. As for selfies, it is a 32 megapixel camera inside that pop-up camera mechanism. Now these are some sample shots taken with the rear camera, regular wide angle camera, and even with the front facing camera. All the pictures have great details, good dynamic range, color reproduction is good, and even the skin tones look good. Overall, these are all good cameras for the price. Now as for the gimbal camera mode, first you need to swivel your phone or use the phone in the swivel mode and open the camera application. And once you do that, you can see the preview from the camera directly on the bigger screen and a lot of controls on the smaller screen. Now using these controls in the smaller screen, you can actually move the camera left or right. You also have different modes and different camera features that you can directly use with this gimbal mode. We get 3 different modes. We have first person view mode, follow mode, and finally pan follow. And with the different modes that you take, you get different effects and you can get a much more stabilized footage. Besides that, we also have dual recording where we can record video with both the front and rear cameras at the same time. And all these features allow you to record video with much more stabilization. By the way, here's a sample shot. Besides the gimbal camera mechanism itself, we have a lot more camera related features, different filters going on for the portrait mode. Besides that, even the low light performance of this phone is pretty good. Overall, cameras on this phone are definitely pretty good, pretty impressive, but the most eye-catching thing would be that gimbal mechanism, and that only matters if you record a lot of videos. Now when it comes to the software department, this phone is running Android 10 with the December 1st, 2020 security patch, and it is pretty similar to the previous LG phones, but because of the new swivel mode and the dual screen mode, we do get a lot of new software features related to this dual display setup. First, we have a brand new launcher for the bigger screen in landscape mode. You can also flip it and use it in the portrait mode, but the preview is pretty much the same, and you can add or remove applications from the bigger screen. And the same thing applies even for the smaller screen. And even when you're using the phone in the swivel mode, you have your own navigation buttons for the bigger screen and the smaller screen. And you can also pair up applications for both the primary and the secondary screen, like an app shortcut. And once you click the shortcut, it opens the appropriate application in the bigger screen and smaller screen. For some compatible applications, say like the gallery application or YouTube, it opens up simultaneously on the top screen and the bottom screen as well. And then you can use both screens to interact with the same application. For gallery application, you have a preview of all the photos on the bigger screen and small previews and some quick shortcuts and controls on the smaller screen. While watching videos on YouTube, you can watch the video on the bigger screen and controls can be displayed on the secondary screen. We can also bring up a trackpad on the secondary screen and use a mouse on the primary screen. As of now, there are a very small number of applications that are actually taking advantage of this dual screen setup, and the best example for that would be Asphalt 9. While playing Asphalt 9, you can play the game on the bigger screen and have the map on the smaller screen. This is just one of the use cases where you can use two screens at the same time, and so far that's the only game that we can test out. Maybe in the future, even for games like PUBG, you can play the game on the bigger screen and have the map on the smaller screen. Well, in fact, all the games can do that. Besides these new features for the dual screen setup, rest of the features are pretty similar to the older LG phones, and there's really not a lot to talk about. Overall software experience has been pretty smooth, there are no major lags. I wish transition between the regular mode and the swivel mode would have been much more smoother, then it would have been great. Now when it comes to performance, this phone sports a Snapdragon 765G processor with Adreno 620 GPU. Even though it isn't a flagship processor, it's still pretty good enough for regular users and even for gamers. And that coupled with a Full HD Plus resolution display definitely gives you a great gaming experience. I've already posted the gaming review, so you can check that out for more information. Only for Asphalt 9, you can play the game in the swivel mode, and in the secondary display, we have the map. As of now, for the rest of the games, the secondary screen is just a blank space. You can use any application over there. By the way, there are no heating issues with this phone. I've done my heating test, and I've continuously played games for about 15 to 20 minutes, and the maximum temperature I've seen was 42 degrees. And even then, phone didn't feel all that hot. And there's no throttling either. So overall performance of this phone is pretty good and definitely not lacking even when compared to a flagship processor. Now when it comes to the audio department, there's no audio jack on this phone, but you do get a Type-C adapter. And there's no dual speaker setup either, it just has a single speaker at the bottom. As far as the speaker loudness goes, here's a quick audio sample. It's pretty loud enough for regular media consumption, ringtones and alarms. And this one also has LG 3D sound engine, which enhances the audio experience when you're listening to audio over a wired headset. Now finally, when it comes to the battery department, this phone packs a 4000 mAh battery and comes with a 16.2 watt fast charger inside the box. And it also supports wireless charging. It takes about 1.5 hours to completely charge the phone from 0 to 100%. And the battery life is pretty decent. Most of the time I've used this phone in the regular mode with a bigger display, and very rarely I've switched to the swivel mode, performing some actions while watching videos. And even then I got an entire day of battery life. It can easily give you up to 5 hours of screen on time. As for the wireless charging, I've tested it, it works, but most of the time I went with the wired charging. So guys, to conclude, LG Wing is like a regular phone but with a completely new form factor, which can give you some additional functionality. it can definitely improve your multitasking experience. It has pretty great cameras, especially that gimbal mechanism, pretty good looking display, and a unique form factor. So if you're looking for a phone that packs in good performance, has good cameras, and has something unique about it, then you can definitely consider this LG Wing. So guys, what do you think about this phone? Do let me know by commenting below this video, and if you're planning to buy this phone, use the link in the description. It always helps the channel. I'm Nikhil from GreedyTech signing off. Have a nice day.